Don't give up so much.
Every year on the 12th of April, Rumia Durskanova plants potatoes in her garden. This is a tradition that appeared in her family thanks to the first human flight into space. On the 12th of April, 1961st year in the Soviet Union, it was put into orbit around the Earth, the world's first human-powered Vostok satellite spacecraft. Rumia was 5 years old when she and her grandmother made trial landings on a warm April day in a field near the village of Smelovka near Saratov, just a few rows.
And as a child, I naturally didn't want to work. I was spinning all the time, looking for some kind of field of view where to play.
Here,
Well, I looked at the sky all the time.
Rumia and her grandmother, not Hayat, were the first people Yuri Gagarin saw when he returned to Earth. I went to the device and I look. This woman is walking with a girl there, to me, under the subway 800. She was from me.
But the bright orange spacesuit, of course, it was beautiful. It didn't look like a monster, but it certainly didn't look like a man. And when he was already walking towards us with such a staggering gait, arms and legs wide apart, well, or I wanted to scare, or maybe it was just like that, not spring. Grandma grabbed my hand, whispered a prayer without a mile. Well, I realized that this is something terrible.
Rumia and her grandmother could not have known about the historical event. There was no radio or TV in the house, but the machine operators from the Leninsky Way collective farm, who had settled down for lunch on the same field, were discussing the news with might and main. They heard it on the radio. But the appearance of a man in a bright orange spacesuit was not connected with the event in any way, and Gagarin was mistaken for a spy, because Powers had been shot down a year before. But when the cosmonaut introduced himself, doubts disappeared. One of the mechanics even climbed into the lander. But there should be alcohol in this device. It is most likely given to pilots. And he rushed there. These are separate stories there, how he got into this machine and looked for alcohol there. After that, they were nicknamed Cosmonaut Number 2 in the village. In just a few minutes, Gagarin's name will spread with cosmic speed throughout the country. And all Soviet newspapers will come out with his portrait. Gagarin is now a brave son of the motherland, a pioneer of space. The motherland celebrates the feat of its sons. There was such warmth coming from him, such from his charmer. Smile. When he had a smile on his face, you know. That's how the physiognomy is put. As they say, successfully. The steps of the pioneers, the steps into history. They are both confident and cautious at the same time. April 12, 1961. Gagarin and his understudy Herman Titov woke up at 5:30 in the morning, did exercises, and had breakfast with the same thing that was already on board the ship. 3.5 hours later, the Vostok with a man on board rushed into space. I'm Dawn 1, ignition. I wish you a good flight. Let's go. The risk was fatal. Everyone knew only in theory how the technology and the man himself would behave in space. In addition, less than a month before the launch, cosmonaut Valentin Bondarenko died during tests in the pressure chamber, burned alive. I was instructed to go, look and sort it out. A big, big leather sofa. So here it is, the skin is burnt out according to the shape of the body. That is, he was spinning, trying to extinguish the flame. And the skin was burned according to the shape of the human body. Boris Volinov is the last of the first cosmonaut squad. He was preparing for the flight with Gagarin. Then he was his neighbor on the floor. The top 20 were selected from almost 3,500 people. The requirements were special perfect health, age 30, height no more than 170 centimeters, and weight no more than 72 kilograms. This was due to the capacity of the first ships and the payload capacity of the missiles. Gagarin was suitable in all respects. Besides, he passed the exams perfectly. But there was something else about him that made designer Sergei Korolev choose him. Gagarin's choice was hardly based on the fact that he calculated this need for Gagarin's smile there, and so on. Most likely, this is to some extent a coincidence, but it was most likely some sum of small nuances that at one time. Out of several options, he stopped at this. Korolev, who, of course, was a genius, not only a scientist, but a brilliant psychologist and a diplomat. He realized that he needed a person who, after returning from a space flight to Earth, would become the face of the Soviet Union. A friendly, open, cheerful person who knows how to talk, who knows how to win people over. And that's why he chose Gagarin. He was still in space, the country was already rejoicing. Her hero at this time conducted the simplest experiments. Ate, drank, took notes on a tablet. This is how he tested the performance of a person in zero gravity. He also reported what he saw. The signal from the Vostok ship was received at observation posts built throughout the Soviet Union. He said I was fine, everything was fine. And he said in such a phrase, when we were also very puzzled, I enter the shadow of the earth. It was at that time that you could understand what it was. Is everything working? Normal old flight. The city of Gagarin. 60 years ago, Jack. Here, the future cosmonaut graduated from 6 classes. Here, they could not believe that their Jura had conquered space.
Our homeroom teacher, Polina Viktorovna, came just at recess, said, Tamara, you have an uncle Yura, don't you? I say, yes, Gagarin, yes, Gagarin. You know, he says, but he flies in space. It was a horror that is simply impossible to convey now. I loved him madly, and suddenly he decided to fly into some black abyss.
After the flight, Yuri Gagarin began a long and no less responsible mission. He became a real ambassador of the world, having traveled to about 30 countries. Any star will envy such a number of business trips and fans, and they did not fade against his background. It was not by chance that the Italian actress Gina Lola Brigida, who came to the Moscow Film Festival, wanted to meet Gagarin.
For me, it was about Gagarin seeing you in that photo.
Even the Queen of England could not resist his smile, who invited the cosmonaut to her palace. And he only came to meet with the foundry workers. But our ambassador pours wine to Gagarin. Moreover, the ambassador said, only I will pour. I don't allow anyone. Andrei Vavilev was Gagarin's translator during his trip to India. An employee of the Soviet embassy carried a movie camera with him so we can see these unique shots that have never been shown on television before. Here Gagarin, along with his wife Valentina and Nikolai Kamanin, are swimming in the ocean. Here he came to the Arrow Club, and here he performs at the film studio. I myself witnessed when, of course, in India, when we were in Bombay at the film studio. He was surrounded by a flock of about 15 beautiful Indian actresses. And of course, they all tried to shake hands, but it was not customary to kiss there. But to smile, to touch, to talk, to take a picture. But I think Valentina understood that this was the cost of their new status, such female attention. In the Union itself, at this time, the fascination with space begins. Christmas toys in the form of a rocket, rockets on playgrounds, and, of course, fashion in the name of Europe. In the 61st, the most popular, a nurse came to my mother and said, today is a historic day, and it happened at lunchtime, just as everyone already knew at lunch. On April 12th of the 61st year and said, this is such a historic day. If you wish, it will be very cool. Well, Dad didn't care, as long as he had a son. I do not know what they even wanted to call me. Do you remember how he appeared? Dense, sturdy, as he walked on the red carpet. Yuri Gagarin himself was reserved about his popularity. I, like other people, have a lot of mistakes. I have my weaknesses too. It is not necessary to idealize a person. It is necessary to take him as he is in life. Otherwise, it turns out unpleasant. It's like I'm so good, so pretty, it makes me sick. And the orchestra was thundering, and Valya was crying with joy and happiness. His priority was work and family. He dreamed of the next flight, and liked to spend his free time with his daughters Elena and Galina.
I walked around with broken knees all the time. I could not master a two-wheeled bicycle in any way, and he brought us such beautiful French bicycles that were good in themselves.
Animals were constantly dragged with my mother, with her sister, that is, with my aunt, about something that did not always cause approval from my grandmother there. There, somehow, ducklings were even dragged into the apartment. They literally swam in the bathtub. The Gagarin family was often invited to the Komsomol dacha in Paradelkino. Here they played volleyball, tennis, and walked in the woods. Yuri learned how to make shish kebab. Gagarin, the head of the kebab team, was under my command. But he also distributed among our guys the responsibility of who is coal time, who is cooking meat. All this was in the nature of fun. There he met Alexandra Pakhmutova and Nikolai Dobronovov. They certainly knew what kind of guy he was. They composed a hit that the country heard after the death of an astronaut in the 60th. He said, "Let's go." He waved his hand, as if along the St. Petersburg swept over the ground. The cosmonaut's surname began to appear in the names of streets, squares, schools, and various institutions. A district in the southwest of Moscow was named in his honor. The location of the monument to Yuri Gagarin was not chosen by chance. That is why he was driving to the solemn meeting from Vnukovo airport on the highway. Later, Muscovites joked about the guests of the capital. It was said that exactly at midnight, the sculpture raises its hands to the sky. And many believed. In terms of the number of monuments, he can compete with Lenin himself. There is an astronaut in stone and bronze in Greece, Germany, Britain, not to mention the CIS. He is still among the most recognizable people on the planet.